The blood on Naomi Turner's skirts had dried to a rust-colored stain by the time she stumbled into the physician's office in Ardmore, Oklahoma, clutching her belly and knowing in her heart that the life she had carried for 6 months was already gone. Dr. Prescott, a graying man with sympathetic eyes, confirmed what she already knew after a brief examination. The baby, a girl, had been stillborn. The contractions that followed were the cruelest kind of labor, bringing forth not hope but sorrow. Naomi wept silently through it all, her husband Richard having been dead for 3 months now, killed in a dispute over cattle grazing rights with a neighboring rancher. She had carried this child as her last connection to him, her last dream of the family they were supposed to build together on their small homestead outside town. When it was over, when the tiny, perfect form had been wrapped in white linen and taken away, Naomi lay on the examination table and stared at the ceiling. She was 23 years old, widowed, childless, and utterly alone. The physician's wife, a kind woman named Martha, helped her clean up and change into a borrowed dress while her own was taken away to be burned. "You have somewhere to go, dear?" Martha asked gently, brushing Naomi's long dark hair back from her tear-stained face. Naomi nodded numbly. "My homestead, 5 miles south. You should not be alone tonight. Do you have family, friends?" The truth was that Naomi had neither. She and Richard had come to Oklahoma Territory from Missouri 2 years ago, drawn by the promise of land and opportunity. They had kept mostly to themselves, working their small plot of land, dreaming of the future. His sudden death had left her isolated, and she had been too consumed with grief, and then with the pregnancy, to reach out to anyone in town. "I will be fine," she whispered, though she knew it was a lie. Martha pursed her lips but did not argue. She helped Naomi to her feet and walked her out to where her wagon waited. The September afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, typical for Oklahoma in 1884. The heat seemed to press against Naomi's skin, suffocating her. She climbed onto the wagon seat with Martha's assistance and took up the reins with trembling hands. The journey back to her homestead passed in a blur. The land stretched out flat and endless in all directions, broken only by occasional stands of cottonwood trees and scrub brush. When she finally reached her small cabin, she unhitched the horse mechanically, seeing to its needs before her own as Richard had taught her. Then she walked inside, closed the door, and collapsed onto the bed she had once shared with her husband. The sobs came then, wrenching and violent, tearing through her body until she had no more tears left to cry. She wept for Richard, for their daughter who would never draw breath, for the dreams that had died with them both. The cabin felt enormous and empty around her, every corner filled with ghosts. She did not know how long she lay there. The light through the window shifted from gold to amber to deep purple. She should rise and light a lamp, she should eat something, she should do any number of things that living people did. But she could not move. The weight of her grief pinned her to the bed as surely as if she were buried beneath stones. Darkness had fully fallen when she heard the sound of hoofbeats approaching. Naomi tensed, fear cutting through her numbness. A woman alone on a remote homestead was vulnerable, and there were men who would take advantage of that. She forced herself to rise, moving to the shelf where Richard's rifle stood. Her hands shook as she lifted it, checking to ensure it was loaded. The hoofbeats stopped outside. There was a pause, then a knock at the door. "Madam, my name is Wade Fletcher. I am a ranch hand from the Cross Creek Ranch. I saw your wagon in town earlier and Dr. Prescott asked me to check on you. He was concerned about you being alone." Naomi clutched the rifle tighter. "I do not need checking on." There was a moment of silence. When the man spoke again, his voice was gentle. "Madam, I can hear in your voice that you have been crying. The doctor told me what happened. I am not here to cause you trouble. I just want to make sure you are all right." "Go away," Naomi said, her voice breaking. "I will," Wade said. "But first, let me just bring in some supplies. Martha Prescott sent food and some other things. I will leave them on your porch and be on my way. You do not even have to open the door." Naomi heard his footsteps retreat, then the sound of something being set down. She waited, rifle still raised, listening. The footsteps did not return to a horse. Instead, she heard the creak of wood that suggested he had sat down on her porch steps. Minutes passed. Then his voice came again, quieter now, as if he were speaking more to himself than to her. "I lost someone too. My wife, Sarah. Childbirth took her and the baby both, 2 years ago. I know the kind of emptiness you are feeling right now. I know how the world seems to have lost all its color. I know how you can look at the sun rising and feel nothing but anger that it dares to keep shining." Despite herself, Naomi found herself listening. She lowered the rifle slightly. "I am not going to tell you it gets easier," Wade continued. "People told me that and it was a lie. It does not get easier, but it gets different. The pain changes shape. It becomes something you can carry instead of something that crushes you." Naomi moved closer to the door, her bare feet silent on the wooden floor. "Why are you here?" she whispered. "Because I remember what it was like," Wade said simply. "I remember those first days when I thought I might die from the weight of it, and I remember wishing that someone, anyone, understood." Slowly, carefully, Naomi set the rifle aside. She put her hand on the door latch, then paused. "Are you truly alone out there? Just me and my horse? And I promise you, I mean you no harm." She opened the door. The man on her porch was younger than she had expected, perhaps 27 or 28. He had removed his hat and held it in his hands, revealing light brown hair that was slightly too long. His face was weathered from years in the sun, with lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often, though he was not smiling now. His expression was one of deep, genuine compassion. He wore simple cowboy clothes, dusty from riding, and his horse, a sturdy bay gelding, was tied to her porch rail. Wade Fletcher looked up at her, and something passed between them, a recognition of shared sorrow. "I brought stew and bread," he said, gesturing to the basket beside him. "And some tea that Martha said might help you sleep, and a few other things." Naomi wrapped her arms around herself. The evening air was still warm, but she felt cold down to her bones. "I do not think I can eat." "You should try," Wade said gently. "Your body has been through something terrible. It needs nourishment to heal." "My body betrayed me," Naomi said bitterly. "It could not even keep my baby alive." Wade stood slowly, as if afraid of startling her. He was tall, perhaps 6 feet, with a lean, muscular build. "Your body did not betray you. Sometimes these things just happen. It was not your fault." "Everyone says that," Naomi said, her voice rising. "But if it was not my fault, then whose fault was it? Why did my baby die? Why did my husband die? What did I do to deserve this?" The tears were coming again, hot and bitter. Wade took a step toward her, then stopped, clearly uncertain of what was appropriate. "You did not deserve any of it. The world is not fair. Bad things happen to good people. It is a truth I hate, but I have had to accept it." Naomi's legs felt weak. She swayed slightly, and Wade moved quickly, catching her elbow to steady her. His hand was warm and strong, calloused from years of ranch work. The simple human contact, the first gentle touch she had experienced since this nightmare began, broke something loose inside her. She wept. Not the quiet, restrained tears she had shed in the doctor's office, but deep, gasping sobs that came from the very center of her being. She wept for everything she had lost, for all the dreams that lay stillborn in her heart. And Wade Fletcher, this stranger who understood grief, did not shy away from her pain. He guided her to the porch steps and sat down beside her, and when she turned instinctively toward him, seeking comfort, he put his arms around her and held her while she cried. "I know," he murmured. "I know it hurts. Let it out. It is all right." Naomi buried her face against his shoulder and wept until she was empty. Wade simply held her, one hand rubbing slow circles on her back, offering the wordless comfort of his presence. His shirt grew damp with her tears, but he did not complain or pull away. He just held her, steady as a mountain, while she fell apart. When the storm finally passed, Naomi pulled back, mortified. "I am sorry. I should not have done that. I do not even know you." "Sometimes it is easier with a stranger," Wade said. "And you have nothing to apologize for." He pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and offered it to her. It was clean and neatly folded, and something about this small gesture of preparedness made her eyes sting again. She wiped her face and tried to compose herself. "Thank you for coming. You were kind to check on me." "I meant what I said out here," Wade told her. "I lost my wife Sarah 2 years ago in Abilene, Kansas. We were only married a year. She was carrying our first child. There were complications. The doctor could not save either of them." His voice remained steady, but she could see the old pain in his eyes. "Afterward, I could not stay in that town. Too many memories. So I drifted south looking for work, trying to outrun my grief. Ended up here in Oklahoma Territory about 6 months ago." "Does it work?" Naomi asked. "Outrunning the grief," Wade shook his head. "No, it follows you wherever you go, but eventually you find a way to make peace with it." He paused. "You should eat something, even just a little, please." Naomi wanted to refuse, but there was something in his eyes, a quiet concern that touched her. She nodded reluctantly, and Wade brought the basket inside. He lit the lamp while she sat at her small table, and then he ladled out a bowl of stew for her. The smell made her stomach turn, but she forced herself to take a spoonful. It was good, rich with beef and vegetables, and after the first bite, she found she was hungrier than she thought. Wade did not eat, just sat across from her and watched to make sure she finished most of the bowl. "Better?" he asked when she set down her spoon. "A little," she admitted. "Thank you." "I should go," Wade said, standing. "Let you rest. But if you need anything, the Cross Creek Ranch is about 8 miles northwest of here. You can send word or come by yourself if you need help with anything." Naomi stood as well, following him to the door. As he reached for his hat, she found herself saying, "Will you come back?" Wade looked at her, surprise flickering across his face. "Do you want me to?" "I do not want to be alone," Naomi whispered. "Not tonight, not yet. I know it is improper, but I cannot bear the thought of being by myself in this house with all its emptiness." Understanding dawned in Wade's eyes. "I will stay outside," he said. "On the porch. I will keep watch through the night so you know you are not alone. Would that help?" It was more than she had any right to ask, but the relief she felt was overwhelming. "Yes, thank you," Wade nodded. "Try to get some sleep. I will be right out here if you need anything." Naomi retreated inside and lay down on her bed, still wearing the borrowed dress. Through the thin walls, she could hear Wade settling onto the porch, the creak of wood as he made himself as comfortable as possible on the hard surface. Knowing he was there, that someone was watching over her, allowed her to close her eyes. Sleep came fitfully, broken by dreams of tiny hands she would never hold, and Richard's voice calling to her from far away. Each time she woke with a start, she would hear Wade moving outside, a quiet cough or the sound of him shifting position, and the knowledge of his presence would ease her back toward rest. When dawn broke, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Naomi rose and splashed water on her face from the basin. She looked terrible, her eyes red and swollen, her face pale. But she was still here. She had survived the night. She opened the door to find Wade standing in the yard, stretching out the kinks from sleeping on her porch. His horse was cropping grass nearby, still saddled. He turned when he heard the door and offered her a small smile. "Morning," he said. "Good morning," Naomi replied. "You must be terribly sore." "I have slept in worse places," Wade said. "How are you feeling?" The honest answer was terrible, but she managed to say, "I am still here." "That is something," Wade nodded. "It is. That is all you need to focus on right now, just being here one day at a time." He moved toward his horse. "I should head back to the ranch. I have work to do, but I will come back this evening if you want, check on you." "You do not have to do that," Naomi said, even though the thought of him leaving made her feel panicky. "I know I do not have to," Wade said. "But I would like to, if it is all right with you." Naomi found herself nodding. "It would be all right." Wade smiled then, a genuine expression that transformed his face. "Then I will see you this evening. Try to eat something during the day. There is more bread and some preserves in the basket." He mounted his horse with easy grace and rode away, heading northwest toward the Cross Creek Ranch. Naomi watched until he disappeared from view, then went back inside her cabin. The day stretched ahead of her, empty and daunting. She looked around at the small space that had once felt like a home and now felt like a prison. Richard's clothes still hung on the pegs by the door. The cradle he had been building sat in the corner, unfinished. She had been sewing baby clothes, tiny dresses and gowns, and they lay in a basket by her rocking chair. Every object was a reminder of what she had lost. She should pack those things away, she thought. But the idea of touching them, of putting away Richard's shirts that still held a faint scent of him, was unbearable. Instead, she forced herself to go through the motions of living. She fed the chickens, collected their eggs, tended to her small garden. The physical work helped, giving her hands something to do even if her mind remained trapped in grief. The day passed with agonizing slowness. But as evening approached, Naomi found herself watching the horizon for any sign of a rider. Sure enough, just as the sun was beginning to set, she saw Wade approaching on his bay horse. This time he had a bedroll tied behind his saddle. "I figured if I am going to be your night watchman, I should come prepared," he said with a hint of humor in his voice as he dismounted. Despite everything, Naomi felt her lips twitch with the ghost of a smile. "That was thoughtful." Wade pulled a cloth-wrapped package from his saddlebag. "I also brought dinner. Cookie at the ranch makes the best fried chicken in the territory. Thought you might appreciate something that did not require you to cook." They ate together on the porch as the sun went down, painting the Oklahoma sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple. Wade told her about his day at the ranch, about the cattle they were preparing to move to winter pasture, about the ornery bull that had escaped its pen, and led the ranch hands on a 2-hour chase. His stories were simple, everyday occurrences, but they reminded Naomi that the world continued to turn despite her grief. "What was she like?" Naomi asked suddenly. "Your wife." Wade was quiet for a moment, staring out at the darkening prairie. "Sarah was sunshine. That is the best way I can describe her. She was always laughing, always seeing the bright side of things. She made friends wherever she went. When she died, it felt like all the light went out of the world." "I am sorry," Naomi said softly. "I am sorry for you too," Wade replied. "What was your husband like?" Naomi had not spoken about Richard to anyone since his death. The words came haltingly at first, then faster. "He was steady, reliable, not a romantic man but good and kind. He always did what he said he would do. When he promised me we would build a good life here, I believed him. And then he was just gone, killed over something so stupid, a boundary dispute. They said it was an accident, that the other rancher's gun went off during an argument, but Richard was still just as dead. And you were pregnant, Wade said, 3 months along when it happened. The baby was all I had left of him. I poured all my hope into that child. I talked to her, told her about her father, planned what our lives would be together. And now she is gone too. Both of my dreams are dead. Wade turned to look at her fully, his expression serious and intent. Then we will dream again together. Naomi blinked, startled by his words. What? You are young, Wade said. You have your whole life ahead of you. I know it does not feel that way right now. I know it feels like everything worth having is gone, but it is not true. You can have new dreams, different ones than you planned maybe, but just as real. I do not know how to do that, Naomi whispered. Neither do I, Wade admitted, but maybe we can figure it out together. You do not have to be alone in this. I meant it when I said I understand what you are going through, and I would like to help if you will let me. There was something in his eyes, a sincerity that made Naomi's heart clench. This man, this stranger who had appeared on her porch at her darkest moment, was offering her something precious. Companionship in grief, understanding without judgment, the possibility that she might one day feel whole again. Why are you being so kind to me? She asked. Wade smiled sadly. Because I remember what it was like when no one was kind to me. After Sarah died, people avoided me. They did not know what to say, so they said nothing. They left me alone with my pain, and I nearly drowned in it. I do not want that for you. Naomi felt tears prick her eyes again, but these were different. Not tears of despair, but of gratitude. Thank you, she managed to say. They sat together as night fell completely, watching the stars emerge one by one in the vast Oklahoma sky. Wade told her their names and the stories behind the constellations, knowledge he had learned from an old cowboy during his early days on the trail. His voice was soothing, and for the first time since losing her baby, Naomi felt something other than crushing sorrow. It was not happiness, not yet, but it was a tiny spark of peace. When she finally went inside to sleep, Wade settled onto the porch with his bedroll. Naomi lay in her bed and listened to him moving around outside, and the loneliness that had threatened to swallow her felt a little less overwhelming. Over the following weeks, Wade's evening visits became a ritual. He would arrive after finishing his work at the Cross Creek Ranch, always bringing food or some small, useful item. Sometimes it was fresh meat from a recent hunt, sometimes vegetables from the ranch garden, once a bottle of good whiskey that they shared in small sips while talking about everything and nothing. Slowly, Naomi began to heal. The raw, bleeding wound of her grief began to scab over. She still cried, often falling apart without warning, but Wade never seemed disturbed by her tears. He would simply hold her when she needed holding and give her space when she needed that instead. He seemed to have an instinct for what she required at any given moment. During the day, Wade began helping her with the heavier work around her homestead. He finished the fence that Richard had started, repaired her barn roof, and chopped enough wood to see her through the winter. Naomi protested that he was doing too much, that she could not repay him for his time and labor, but Wade waved away her concerns. I am not keeping accounts, he told her. I am just helping a friend. A friend. The word warmed something inside Naomi. She had not realized how isolated she had been, how much she needed human connection beyond the purely transactional relationships of town commerce. One evening in early October, as they sat on her porch watching the sunset, Wade said, I have been thinking about something. What is that? Naomi asked, rocking gently in the chair Wade had repaired for her. Winter is coming. It gets hard out here when the weather turns. You should not be alone if a bad storm hits, and I do not like the idea of you managing everything by yourself in the cold and snow. I will be fine, Naomi said, though she had been worrying about the same thing. I am not saying you could not manage it, Wade said carefully, but I would feel better if there was someone closer. What if you got sick? What if something happened to one of your animals? It could be hours before anyone found you. Naomi frowned. What are you suggesting? Wade seemed to choose his words carefully. The Cross Creek Ranch has a bunkhouse for the hands, but there are also a couple of small cabins for married workers. One of them is empty. You could move there for the winter. There would be people around if you needed help, and you would not be so isolated. I could not just abandon my homestead, Naomi protested. Not abandon, just leave it for the winter. I would check on it regularly, make sure everything stays secure. And in the spring, if you wanted to move back, you could. Naomi bit her lip, considering. The thought of leaving the cabin where she had lived with Richard felt like a betrayal, but the thought of spending the winter alone with only her grief for company was equally daunting. I do not know, she said slowly. Think about it, Wade urged. You do not have to decide right now, but the offer stands. 2 weeks later, when the first cold snap hit and Naomi spent a miserable night trying to keep her poorly insulated cabin warm, she reconsidered Wade's offer. The next time he visited, she told him she would accept, at least temporarily. Wade's face lit up with relief. I think you are making the right choice. We will get you moved before the weather gets too bad. The following Saturday, Wade arrived with a wagon and another ranch hand, a cheerful young man named Tom who helped them load Naomi's essential belongings. She took her clothes, kitchen items, and a few precious mementos of Richard, but left the furniture and heavier items behind. The half-finished cradle she could not bear to look at, so she covered it with a sheet and tried not to think about it. The Cross Creek Ranch was larger than Naomi had imagined. The main house was a sprawling structure of wood and stone, and behind it were several barns, corrals, and outbuildings. The bunkhouse Wade had mentioned was a long, low building that housed the single ranch hands. Set apart from it were 3 small cabins, each with its own porch and yard. Wade directed the wagon to the middle cabin. This one has been empty since the Johnsons moved back east last year. It is small, but it is tight and well built. Should keep you warm through the winter. Naomi climbed down from the wagon and looked around. The cabin was indeed small, just 2 rooms, but it was clean and well maintained. Someone, probably Wade, had stocked the woodpile and laid a fire ready to light. There were curtains on the windows and a colorful quilt on the bed. Did you do all this? Naomi asked, running her hand over the quilt. Wade looked sheepish. I wanted you to feel welcome. The quilt was my mother's. She passed a few years ago, but I have been carrying it around in my things. Seemed like it should be used. The gesture touched Naomi deeply. Thank you for all of this. Over the following days, Naomi settled into life at the ranch. The other people there, a mix of cowboys and a few families, were friendly but respectful of her privacy. Wade's boss, a gruff but fair man named John Morrison, made it clear that she was welcome to stay as long as she needed, and that she could earn her keep by helping the ranch cook with meal preparation if she was inclined. Naomi found she was inclined. Cooking for the ranch hands gave her something to do, a purpose beyond simply surviving. She worked alongside Cookie, whose real name was Samuel but whom everyone called by his nickname, learning to prepare meals for large groups. The work was hard but satisfying, and the appreciation of the hungry cowboys who praised her biscuits and stews helped her feel useful again. Wade, meanwhile, continued to spend his evenings with her. Now that she lived on the ranch, he did not have to ride so far, and their time together increased. They took walks around the property, played cards by lamplight, and talked about their pasts and their hopes for the future. I used to want a big family, Naomi admitted one evening in late November as they sat by her fire. 6 or 7 children, a house full of noise and laughter. Now I am not sure I could bear it if something went wrong again. You are stronger than you think, Wade said. You have survived something that would have broken a lesser person. If you want a family someday, you will have it. You still want children? Naomi asked. After what happened to Sarah, Wade was quiet for a long moment. Yes, he said finally. I do. I think Sarah would want me to. She loved children, was always talking about the family we would have. Her death should not mean those dreams die too. They just need to find a new form. Naomi looked at him, really looked at him in the firelight. Somewhere along the way, Wade Fletcher had become essential to her. She no longer thought of him as the stranger who had appeared on her porch that terrible night. He was Wade, her friend, her confidant, the person who understood her grief and did not try to rush her through it. But she was beginning to feel something more than friendship, and the realization both excited and terrified her. Was it too soon? Richard had been dead for only 6 months, her baby for even less. Was she betraying their memory by developing feelings for another man? As if sensing her thoughts, Wade reached over and took her hand. His palm was warm and rough against hers. Naomi, I need to tell you something. Her heart began to beat faster. What is it? These past months, getting to know you, being there for you, they have meant more to me than I can say. You have reminded me that life can still be beautiful even after terrible loss, that there is still kindness and connection and hope in the world. He paused, his blue eyes searching hers. I have developed feelings for you, romantic feelings, and I do not want to rush you or make you uncomfortable, but I needed you to know. Naomi's breath caught. Wade, I do not know what to say. You do not have to say anything right now, Wade assured her. I am not asking for any promises or commitments. I just wanted to be honest with you. If you do not feel the same way, if it is too soon, I understand completely. We can continue as friends and nothing has to change. But something had changed, Naomi realized. The moment Wade had spoken his feelings aloud, everything had shifted. She could no longer pretend that the warmth she felt when he smiled at her was purely platonic, or that the way her heart lifted when she saw him riding toward her cabin was just gratitude. I think I have feelings for you too, she whispered, but I feel guilty about it. Like I am being disloyal to Richard's memory. Wade squeezed her hand gently. Love is not a finite resource, Naomi. Caring for me does not diminish what you felt for your husband. He will always be a part of your story, and you can honor his memory while still allowing yourself to move forward. How did you get so wise? Naomi asked with a shaky laugh. Hard experience, Wade said ruefully. After Sarah died, I was angry at the world, angry at God, angry at myself, angry at her for leaving me. It took me a long time to realize that the anger was just hurting me. That the best way to honor her was to live the kind of life she would have wanted for me. A full life, with love and hope and purpose. Naomi leaned her head against his shoulder, and Wade wrapped his arm around her. They sat like that for a long time, watching the fire burn down to embers, neither speaking but both feeling the significance of what had been acknowledged between them. In the days that followed, their relationship deepened. They were careful with each other, aware that they both carried wounds that had not fully healed. Wade would hold her hand as they walked, or put his arm around her shoulders, but he never pushed for more. He seemed content to let things develop at Naomi's pace. December brought the first real snow, a heavy fall that blanketed the ranch in white and turned the world quiet and pristine. Naomi stood on her cabin porch, watching the flakes drift down, and thought about her baby. She would have been due in January. The ache of that loss was still there, still sharp, but it no longer consumed her every waking moment. Wade appeared from the bunkhouse, trudging through the snow with a grin on his face. "First snow of the season," he called. "Beautiful, is it not?" It is, Naomi agreed. Come inside before you freeze. Wade stamped the snow from his boots and came into the warm cabin, bringing the cold smell of winter with him. Naomi had been baking bread, and the yeasty aroma filled the small space. Wade inhaled appreciatively. Smells like heaven in here, he said. It will be ready soon, Naomi promised. Would you like to stay for dinner? I would love to. They had fallen into the habit of sharing meals several times a week. Naomi cooked, and Wade would bring supplies or help with cleanup. It felt domestic and comfortable, like they were practicing for something more permanent. As they ate that evening, Wade said, I have been thinking about the future, about what I want. And what do you want? Naomi asked. I want my own land, Wade said. I have been saving my wages, and I think by spring I will have enough to file a claim on a good piece of property. There is a spot about 10 miles from here, near a creek, with good grazing land and timber for building. I have had my eye on it for a while. That sounds wonderful, Naomi said, genuinely happy for him. Wade met her eyes. I would like you to see it. Before I file the claim, get your opinion on whether it would make a good homestead. The implication was clear, and Naomi felt her pulse quicken. Wade, are you asking what I think you are asking? Not yet, Wade said carefully. But I would like to. Someday, when you are ready. I want to build a life with you, Naomi. I want us to dream again together, just like I said that first night. But only if that is what you want too. Naomi stood from the table and walked to the window, looking out at the snow-covered landscape. She thought about Richard, about the life they had planned together. That dream was gone, and no amount of wishing would bring it back. But Wade was offering her a new dream, one built on understanding and shared experience and genuine affection. She turned back to face him. I would like to see the land. Wade's face broke into a brilliant smile. Really, really, Naomi confirmed, after the snow clears a bit. Show me this place you have been dreaming about. The opportunity came in mid-December during a warm spell that melted much of the snow. Wade saddled 2 horses, and they rode out together on a crisp, clear morning. The land around Ardmore rolled gently, covered in winter-brown grass and dotted with stands of oak and cottonwood trees. After about an hour of riding, Wade led them down into a small valley where a creek ran, its water clear and cold. On the south-facing slope above the creek was a meadow, protected from the north wind by a rise of land behind it. This is it, Wade said, dismounting and helping Naomi down. What do you think? Naomi walked slowly across the meadow, taking it in. The location was sheltered but not isolated. The creek would provide water year-round. The slope would catch the sun in winter, making it easier to keep a house warm. There was timber for building and good grass for livestock. It is perfect, she said honestly. You could build a good life here. Wade came to stand beside her. We could build a good life here, he corrected gently. Naomi looked up at him. His face was hopeful but patient, waiting for her response. She realized in that moment that she had a choice to make. She could cling to the past, to the ghosts of Richard and the baby she had lost, or she could step forward into an uncertain but hopeful future with Wade. We could, she said softly, and watched joy bloom on his face. Wade pulled her into his arms and held her close. I love you, Naomi Turner. I know it is fast, and I know we both have pasts that complicate things, but I love you. I think I have loved you since that first night when you opened your door and let me see your pain. I love you too, Naomi whispered, the words feeling both strange and right on her tongue. I did not think I could feel this way again, but I do. Wade pulled back just enough to look at her face, his hands cupping her cheeks. Can I kiss you? In answer, Naomi rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle and sweet, full of promise rather than passion. It tasted like new beginnings, When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. "So, is that a yes?" Wade asked. "Will you marry me and help me build our dream here?" "Yes," Naomi said without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you." They rode back to the ranch in high spirits, already making plans. Wade wanted to file his claim immediately and start gathering materials for building. Naomi suggested they wait until spring to marry, wanting to give herself a full year after Richard's death before taking such a significant step. Wade agreed readily, understanding her need to honor that timeline. The ranch hands were delighted when they heard the news. Cookie slapped Wade on the back and declared he would make the wedding cake himself. John Morrison, the ranch owner, offered the use of the main house for the wedding celebration and congratulated them both warmly. "You are good for each other," he told them. "I have watched Wade come back to life these past months, and you, Miss Turner, have found your smile again. That is a beautiful thing to witness." The winter passed in a flurry of planning. Wade worked every spare moment on gathering supplies for their future home. He and the other ranch hands cut timber and hauled it to the building site. Naomi spent her time sewing curtains and linens, creating a trousseau from whatever fabric she could acquire. The physical work helped both of them channel their excitement and anticipation into something productive. They also spent time getting to know each other more deeply. They talked about their childhoods, their families, their dreams and fears. Naomi learned that Wade had grown up on a small farm in Illinois, the youngest of 4 brothers. He had headed west at 18 seeking adventure and had found work as a cowboy. He met Sarah in a Kansas town where he had stopped to work a season, and they had married quickly, caught up in the whirlwind of young love. Naomi shared her own story. A childhood in Missouri as the only daughter of a schoolteacher and a seamstress, an education that was unusual for a girl of her station, her marriage to Richard at 19 after a proper courtship. She spoke honestly about her marriage, acknowledging that while she had cared for Richard, theirs had been more a partnership of mutual respect than a passionate romance. "I want something different this time," she told Wade one evening. "I want to feel that excitement, that sense of being truly connected to another person." "I want that too," Wade said, pulling her close. "And I think we have it, do not you?" Naomi nodded against his chest. "I do. Sometimes it scares me how much I feel for you." "It scares me too," Wade admitted. "Because I know what it is like to lose someone you love. But I have decided that the risk is worth it. A life without love is not really living." As winter gave way to early spring, Wade and several other ranch hands began construction on the house. It would be simple but sturdy, with 2 rooms on the ground floor and a loft above. Wade planned to add on as their family grew, a thought that made Naomi's heart both ache and soar. She had come to terms with her lost pregnancy, understanding that it was a grief she would carry forever, but that it did not have to define her entire future. She still thought about the daughter she had never met, still wondered what might have been, but she could also look forward with hope to the children she might yet have with Wade. In early April, a week before the wedding, Naomi returned to her old homestead for the first time since leaving it in the fall. Wade accompanied her, understanding that she needed to make peace with this place before she could fully move forward. The cabin looked smaller than she remembered, slightly shabby from months of sitting empty. Wade had kept his promise to check on it regularly, so nothing was damaged, but it had the forlorn air of an abandoned place. Naomi walked through the rooms slowly, touching Richard's hanging clothes, running her hand over the table where they had shared meals. In the corner, still covered with its sheet, sat the unfinished cradle. Naomi pulled the sheet away and looked at it, really looked at it for the first time since her loss. Richard's craftsmanship was evident in the smooth, carefully joined wood. It was a cradle made with love, intended for a child who would never sleep in it. What do you want to do with it? Wade asked gently from the doorway. Naomi thought for a long moment. I want you to finish it, she said. And when we have our first child, I want them to sleep in it. That way, something of Richard and our baby will be part of our future. They will not be forgotten. Wade came to stand beside her, looking down at the cradle. That is a beautiful idea. Are you sure? I am sure, Naomi said firmly. The past does not have to be locked away and never mentioned. It can be woven into the present, honored but not worshipped. Does that make sense? Perfect sense, Wade said, kissing her temple. I will finish it, and I will do my best to make it as beautiful as Richard intended. They gathered a few more items from the cabin, including some of Richard's tools that Wade could use, and Naomi took one last look around. Goodbye, she whispered to the empty rooms, to the ghosts that lingered there. Thank you for the time we had. I will remember you with love. Outside, Wade was loading the wagon. Naomi joined him, and together they headed back toward the Cross Creek Ranch and the future that awaited them. The wedding took place on a brilliant April morning, with wildflowers blooming across the prairie and the sky a deep, endless blue. Naomi wore a dress of pale blue cotton that she had sewn herself, with lace at the collar that had been her mother's. Wade wore his best suit, his hair neatly trimmed and his boots polished to a shine. They were married by a circuit preacher who traveled through the territory, with the ranch hands and families as witnesses. John Morrison gave Naomi away, and Cookie stood up as Wade's best man. It was a simple ceremony, but it was filled with genuine joy and affection. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Wade kissed Naomi with such tenderness that several of the watching women wiped tears from their eyes. The celebration that followed was boisterous, with fiddle music and dancing and more food than seemed possible. Naomi danced with Wade, with John Morrison, with several of the ranch hands, until her feet ached and her sides hurt from laughing. As the sun began to set, Wade and Naomi slipped away to the cabin that would be theirs for one more night before they moved to their own land. Inside, away from the noise of the celebration, they stood facing each other in the lamplight. "Hello, Mrs. Fletcher," Wade said with a grin. "Hello, Mr. Fletcher," Naomi replied, feeling a blush rise to her cheeks. Wade reached out and began to slowly undo the buttons at the back of her dress, his fingers gentle and patient. "I have been thinking about this moment for months," he murmured, "making you truly mine." "I have been thinking about it too," Naomi admitted. Her experience with Richard had been pleasant enough, but there had been no real passion in their marriage bed. She hoped, yearned even, for something different with Wade. She was not disappointed. Wade's touch was reverent and tender, but there was also heat in it, a genuine desire that made Naomi's breath catch. He took his time undressing her, kissing each bit of newly revealed skin, whispering words of love and admiration, until Naomi was trembling with want. When they finally came together, it was everything she had hoped for. Wade was patient and attentive, focused on her pleasure as much as his own. The physical connection deepened the emotional bond between them, and when they lay tangled together afterward, Naomi felt complete in a way she never had before. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," Wade replied, his arms tightening around her. "Thank you for choosing to dream again with me." They spent 2 more days at the ranch, packing up Naomi's belongings and accepting congratulations and well wishes. Then, with a loaded wagon and high spirits, they made the journey to their own land. The house was not quite finished, but it was livable. Wade had worked tirelessly to get the roof on and the walls sealed before the wedding. The interior was still rough, lacking many of the comforts they would eventually add, but it was theirs. That first night in their own home, they lay on a makeshift bed of straw ticking and quilts, listening to the sound of the creek babbling nearby and the wind moving through the trees. "We are really doing this," Naomi said wonderingly. "Starting completely fresh." "We are," Wade confirmed. "And it is going to be amazing. Hard work, definitely, but amazing." He was right about the hard work. Those first months were a constant cycle of building, planting, and establishing their homestead. Wade worked from dawn to dusk, and Naomi labored beside him. They planted a kitchen garden and a larger field of corn and wheat. They built a chicken coop and a small barn. They slowly turned the raw land into a working farm. In the evenings, exhausted but satisfied, they would sit on their porch and watch the sun set over their property. Wade finished the cradle, sanding and staining the wood until it gleamed. He presented it to Naomi on a warm June evening, and she ran her hands over it with tears in her eyes. "It is beautiful," she said. "Richard would be proud of how you finished his work." "I hope so," Wade said. I tried to imagine what he would have done and follow that. The cradle sat in the corner of their bedroom, waiting. Naomi found herself hoping that it would not have to wait too long. Her hope was answered in July when she woke one morning feeling distinctly unwell. At first, she thought it might be something she had eaten, but when the nausea persisted for several days, always worse in the morning, she began to suspect the truth. She waited another week before telling Wade, wanting to be certain. When she finally did, on a peaceful evening as they sat on their porch, she simply took his hand and placed it on her still flat belly. "I think we are going to need that cradle," she said softly. Wade's eyes went wide. "You are pregnant," Naomi nodded, feeling tears sting her eyes. She was overjoyed but also terrified, remembering too well what had happened last time. Wade saw the fear in her face and pulled her into his arms. "It is going to be all right," he said firmly. "This baby is going to be healthy and strong. I believe that with everything in me." "How can you be sure?" Naomi whispered. "I cannot be," Wade admitted, "but I choose to have faith, and whatever happens, we will face it together. You are not alone this time, Naomi. You have me, and I am not going anywhere." His certainty helped calm Naomi's fears. As the weeks passed and her belly began to swell with new life, she allowed herself to hope. This pregnancy felt different from the last one. She felt stronger, more energetic, and she had Wade's constant support and love to buoy her. In October, when the Oklahoma heat finally broke and the air turned crisp, they made a trip into Ardmore to see Dr. Prescott. The physician examined Naomi thoroughly and declared that everything seemed to be progressing normally. "The baby should arrive around February," he told them. "You are healthy and strong, Mrs. Fletcher. I have no reason to believe you will not carry this child to term." Wade squeezed Naomi's hand, and she saw relief and joy in his eyes. "Thank you, doctor," he said. On the way home, Naomi found herself quietly crying. Wade pulled the wagon to a stop and turned to her with concern. "What is wrong? Are you all right?" "I am happy," Naomi said through her tears. "That is all, just so happy and so grateful. A year ago, I thought my life was over. I thought I would never feel joy again. And now I have you, and we have a home, and we are going to have a baby. It is almost too much to take in." Wade pulled her against his side. "You deserve all of it and more. You have been so brave, Naomi, so strong. I am in awe of you." "I could not have done it without you," Naomi said. "You were there when I needed someone most. You held me when I wept over my stillborn dream, and you promised we would dream again together. And we did. We are living that dream right now." As fall turned to winter, Naomi grew round with child. Wade was attentive to the point of hovering, constantly asking if she was comfortable, if she needed anything, if he should fetch the doctor. Naomi found his concern endearing, though she had to occasionally remind him that she was pregnant. not made of glass. "I just do not want anything to go wrong," Wade admitted one evening as he rubbed her swollen feet. "I know," Naomi said gently, "but worrying will not change anything. We just have to trust that everything will work out as it should." Christmas came, and they celebrated quietly in their home. Wade had carved a set of wooden toys for the coming baby, tiny animals that he painted with bright colors. Naomi had sewn a layette of small gowns and blankets, each stitch an act of faith that this child would live to wear them. On Christmas night, as they lay in bed with Naomi's belly pressed against Wade's side, they felt the baby kick. Wade's face lit up with wonder. "Did you feel that?" "I have been feeling it for weeks," Naomi said with a laugh. "But this is the first time the kicks have been strong enough for you to feel from the outside." Wade splayed his hand over her belly, waiting. When another kick came, he laughed with pure delight. "That is our baby," he said wonderingly. "Our child." "Our child," Naomi echoed, and in that moment she let go of the last of her fear. This baby was real, alive, and fighting to be born. She would trust in that strength. February arrived with unseasonably warm weather. Naomi was huge now, waddling more than walking and thoroughly ready for the pregnancy to be over. Wade had arranged for Dr. Prescott to stay at a neighboring ranch so he could come quickly when the time came. The labor began on a sunny afternoon. Naomi was hanging laundry when she felt the first contraction, a tightening across her belly that took her breath away. She stood still, hands pressed to her stomach, waiting to see if it was a false alarm or the real thing. When the next contraction came 20 minutes later, she knew. "Wade." She called. He was in the barn and he came running at the sound of her voice. "Is it time?" he asked, his face going pale. "I think so," Naomi said. "The pains have started. You should go get the doctor." Wade helped her into the house first, making sure she was comfortable, before riding hell for leather to fetch Dr. Prescott. He returned with the physician within an hour, and then there was nothing to do but wait. Labor was long and difficult. The contractions grew stronger and closer together as the hours passed. Wade stayed by Naomi's side the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her forehead with cool cloths, whispering encouragement when she was sure she could not endure another moment. "You can do this," he told her over and over. "You are the strongest person I know. Our baby is almost here." As dawn broke on February 15th, the contractions reached their peak. Dr. Prescott examined Naomi and declared that it was time to push. Naomi bore down with all her strength, determined to bring this child safely into the world. And then, after what felt like an eternity, she heard it, the thin, angry wail of a newborn baby. "It is a boy," Dr. Prescott announced, placing the squalling infant on Naomi's chest. "A healthy, strong boy." Naomi looked down at her son through tears of joy. He was red-faced and furious, his tiny fists waving, but he was perfect, absolutely perfect. Wade leaned over them both, his own face wet with tears, and kissed first Naomi and then the baby. "We have a son," he said wonderingly. "Naomi, we have a son. What should we name him?" Naomi asked, unable to take her eyes off the baby. Wade thought for a moment. "What about William? William Richard Fletcher. We can call him Will. That way he carries both our father's names and also honors your first husband." Naomi looked up at Wade with so much love she thought her heart might burst. "That is perfect. William Richard Fletcher. Hello, Will. We are so glad you are here." The next weeks passed in a blur of sleepless nights and diaper changes and the overwhelming love that comes with a newborn. Will was a good baby, healthy and strong, nursing well and growing quickly. Naomi marveled at him constantly, still half afraid that this happiness would be snatched away. But as the weeks turned to months and Will continued to thrive, Naomi's fears gradually eased. She had been given a second chance at the family she thought she had lost, and she was determined to cherish every moment. Wade was a devoted father, constantly holding Will, talking to him, showing him the ranch. "I want him to know he is loved," Wade told Naomi. "I want him to grow up secure and happy." "He will," Naomi assured him. "With parents like us, how could he not?" When Will was 6 months old, strong and healthy and beginning to sit up on his own, Naomi placed him in the cradle that Richard had begun and Wade had finished. The baby looked tiny in it, but he seemed content, reaching up to bat at the small mobile Wade had hung above it. "There you go, little one," Naomi whispered. "This cradle was made with love by 3 people. Your birth father, Richard, who you never got to meet. Your older sister, who waits for you in heaven. And your papa, Wade, who loves you more than anything in the world." Wade came to stand beside her, slipping an arm around her waist. "Do you think Richard would be happy for you, for us?" Naomi considered the question seriously. "I think he would. He was a good man, and he would want me to be happy. He would want his daughter to be remembered with love, not just sorrow, and I think he would appreciate that you finished what he started." They stood together, watching their son drift off to sleep in the cradle that connected their past to their present. Outside, the Oklahoma sun blazed down on their land, on the home they had built together, on the dream they had made real. 2 years later, Naomi gave birth to a daughter. They named her Sarah Marie Fletcher, after Wade's first wife and Naomi's mother. Sarah was a sunny, cheerful baby, and Will adored his little sister from the moment he met her. Their family continued to grow. In 1889, another son arrived whom they named Thomas. In 1891, twin girls, Elizabeth and Emma, completed their family. The house that Wade had built was expanded multiple times to accommodate their growing brood, and the homestead prospered. Through all of it, Naomi never forgot the terrible grief that had brought her to Wade. She kept a small photograph of Richard on the mantel, and once a year, on the anniversary of her first daughter's stillbirth, she and Wade would take the children to a quiet spot by the creek. There, they would speak about the baby who had not survived, keeping her memory alive so that she remained a part of their family's story. "It is important to remember where we came from," Naomi would tell her children as they grew older. "To honor the people who helped shape us, even if they are not here with us now." Will, as the oldest, understood this best. When he was 12, he asked his mother to tell him about Richard. Naomi spoke honestly about her first marriage, about the good man who had been taken too soon, and about the baby sister Will had never met. "You think she would have liked me?" Will asked. "She would have loved you," Naomi said with certainty. "And she would be so proud of the fine young man you are becoming." As the children grew, they took on more responsibilities around the ranch. Will showed a natural talent for working with horses, while Sarah had her father's head for business and helped keep the ranch accounts. Thomas was a builder like Wade, always constructing something or fixing what was broken. The twins were still young but showed promise in the garden, helping Naomi tend the vegetables and flowers. Wade and Naomi's love for each other deepened with each passing year. They had built something real and lasting from the ashes of their losses, a testament to the resilience of the human heart. On quiet evenings, after the children were in bed, they would sit on their porch as they had done from the very beginning, watching the Oklahoma sky fade from blue to purple to black. "You remember that first night?" Wade asked one such evening. It was late summer in 1895, and they had been married for 11 years. "When you opened your door and I saw how much pain you were in, I remember everything about that night," Naomi said, her hand finding his. "I remember thinking my life was over, that I would never be happy again. And now?" Wade asked, though he knew the answer. Naomi looked back at their house, where 5 beautiful children slept safely. She thought about the life they had built, the love they shared, the dreams they had made real. Now I know that even in our darkest moments there is hope. That we can weep over our stillborn dreams, but if we are brave enough, if we are willing to trust and love again, we can dream new dreams. Better dreams, maybe, because we understand how precious they are. Wade pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "We will dream again together," he quoted his own words from that long-ago night. "That is what I told you." "And you kept your promise," Naomi said. "We have dreamed together, Wade, and those dreams have become our beautiful reality." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars emerged one by one. In the house, Will cried out in his sleep, and Naomi heard Sarah's voice soothing him. Her children, the living embodiment of hope and love and second chances. Her family, built from grief and loss, but sustained by something far stronger. The years continued to pass. Will grew into a fine young man and eventually married a sweet girl from Ardmore named Rebecca. They built their own cabin on Fletcher land and started their own family, making Naomi and Wade grandparents. Sarah met a rancher from Texas and moved south, though she visited often with her growing family. Thomas followed in his father's footsteps, working the Fletcher ranch and eventually taking over much of its management. Elizabeth became a teacher, while Emma married a doctor and moved to Oklahoma City. Through it all, Wade and Naomi remained the heart of the family. Their love story became legendary in the area, the tale of 2 grieving people who found each other in the darkness and built a life filled with light. On their 25th wedding anniversary in 1909, their children and grandchildren gathered for a celebration. The original house had been expanded so many times it was hardly recognizable, but the cradle still sat in Naomi and Wade's bedroom, now holding the newest grandchild. Will stood to make a toast. He was 33 now, the same age Wade had been when Naomi met him, and the resemblance between father and son was striking. "To my parents," Will said, raising his glass, "who taught us that love is not something that happens to you once and never again. That the human heart is capable of healing and growing and loving beyond what we think possible, that we can honor our past while embracing our future. To Wade and Naomi Fletcher, the strongest people I know." The family echoed the toast, and Naomi found herself crying happy tears. Wade squeezed her hand under the table, and she turned to look at him. He was 62 now, his hair more gray than brown, his face lined with the evidence of years spent working in the sun. But his eyes were the same blue that had looked at her with such compassion that terrible night, and his love for her burned as brightly as ever. "Thank you," she whispered to him. "For what?" Wade asked. "For not letting me give up. For showing me that there was still beauty and love and hope in the world. For every day we have had together." Wade brought her hand to his lips and kissed it. "You saved me too, you know. I was just going through the motions before I met you. You reminded me what it meant to truly live." That night, after all the guests had gone and the house was quiet, Wade and Naomi walked out to the spot where Wade had first brought her all those years ago. The creek still ran clear and cold, and the meadow was bathed in moonlight. "Do you ever regret it?" Naomi asked. "Choosing to love again after Sarah? I know how much you loved her." "Never," Wade said without hesitation. "Sarah will always have a place in my heart, just as Richard and your first baby will always have a place in yours, but that does not diminish what we have. Our love is different, built on different foundations, but it is just as real and just as precious." Naomi leaned against him, feeling the solid warmth of his body. They had grown older together, had weathered storms both literal and metaphorical. They had buried parents and mourned the loss of friends. They had celebrated births and marriages and harvests. Through all of it, they had been partners in the truest sense, facing life as a united front. "I love you, Wade Fletcher," Naomi said. "I love you too, Naomi Fletcher," Wade replied. They stood together in the moonlight, two people who had found each other in the depths of grief and built a legacy of love. Their story was not one of fairy tale romance or love at first sight. It was something deeper and more real. Two broken people choosing to heal together, to trust again, to believe that life could still hold joy even after profound loss. The years continued to be kind to them. Wade remained healthy and active well into his 70s, still working the ranch alongside Thomas and Will. Naomi became the matriarch of a sprawling family, beloved by children, grandchildren, and eventually great-grandchildren. Their home was always full of laughter and love, a gathering place for the family they had created. When Wade finally passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 81, in the spring of 1924, Naomi mourned him deeply. But she did not fall apart the way she had when Richard died. She had loved Wade for 40 years, had built a life and a family with him, and while his loss created a hole in her heart, she knew she could survive it. He had taught her that grief was not the end of the story, only a part of it. At his funeral, surrounded by their 5 children, 23 grandchildren, and 12 great-grandchildren, Naomi spoke about the man Wade had been. She told the story of how they met, how he had appeared on her porch during her darkest hour and offered her hope. She spoke of his kindness, his strength, his unwavering faith that life could be beautiful even after tragedy. "He taught me to dream again," Naomi said, her voice strong despite her tears. "When I thought all my dreams were dead, he showed me that we could dream together. And what dreams we made real. Look around you at this family, at all these beautiful people who exist because Wade Fletcher refused to let me give up on life. That is his legacy, not just the ranch or the land, but the love that continues through all of you." Naomi lived for another 6 years after Wade's death, long enough to see Will's son marry and start a family of his own. She spent her final years in the house Wade had built, surrounded by the memories of their life together. The cradle, now a treasured family heirloom, held another generation of Fletcher babies. On a warm June evening in 1930, Naomi passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 73. She was buried beside Wade in the small cemetery plot on their land, her headstone bearing the inscription, "Beloved wife, mother, grandmother, she learned to dream again." At her funeral, Will, now 60 years old and the patriarch of the Fletcher family, shared one final story. He spoke of a conversation he had with his mother shortly before her death, when she had been reminiscing about her life. "I asked her if she had any regrets," Will said, "and she told me no. She said that every joy and every sorrow had brought her to exactly where she was meant to be. That losing her first husband and her first baby had been devastating, but it had also led her to Wade, to us, to the full and beautiful life she lived. She said that we should never be afraid of grief, because on the other side of it, if we are brave enough to keep going, there is always the possibility of new joy." The Fletcher family continued to thrive for generations, their story passed down as a testament to the power of resilience and love. The ranch that Wade and Naomi built remained in the family, growing and changing with the times, but always rooted in the values they had established. And in every generation, there was at least one young person who heard the story of their great-great-grandparents and learned an essential truth. That loss is not the end, that grief can be survived, and that the human heart is capable of healing and loving again, no matter how broken it might seem. Naomi Turner and Wade Fletcher had both experienced the deepest kind of sorrow. They had both lost spouses and children, had both felt the crushing weight of dreams that died before they could be realized. But they had also found each other, and in finding each other, they had discovered that it was possible to build new dreams, different dreams, but dreams just as worthy and real as the ones they had lost. Their love story was not about forgetting the past or pretending that their losses had not mattered. It was about honoring those losses while still choosing to move forward, to open their hearts to new possibilities, to believe that life could still hold beauty and meaning. On the land where their house once stood, where Wade first showed Naomi the place he dreamed of building their life, there is now a thriving ranch run by their descendants. The creek still runs clear and cold, the meadow still catches the sun, and in the evening, if you listen carefully, you can almost hear the echo of two people sitting on a porch, dreaming together about the future they would build. Their story lives on, a reminder that even in our darkest moments when we weep over our stillborn dreams, there is always the possibility of someone appearing to say, "We will dream again together." And if we are brave enough to believe them, to trust in the possibility of new beginnings, we might just find that those new dreams are everything we never knew we needed. The Fletcher family legacy continues to this day, a testament to what can be built when two broken people choose to heal together, to love again, to believe that the best is yet to come. Wade and Naomi's great-great-great-grandchildren still live in Oklahoma, still tell the story of their ancestors, still understand that love and loss are not opposites but partners in the grand journey of life. And somewhere, in whatever lies beyond this world, perhaps Wade and Naomi are together again, along with Sarah and Richard and the baby girl who never drew breath. Perhaps they are all at peace, knowing that the dreams they started, the lives they touched, the love they gave and received continues to ripple outward through time, touching generation after generation. That is the true miracle of their story. Not that they survived their grief, but that they transformed it into something beautiful. They took the broken pieces of their shattered dreams and used them to build something stronger, something lasting, something that would endure long after they were gone. Naomi Turner Fletcher and Wade William Fletcher were two ordinary people who lived through extraordinary pain. But they were also two extraordinary people who chose not to let that pain define them. They chose love over fear, hope over despair, life over merely existing. And in making that choice, they created a legacy that would inspire their descendants for generations to come. Their story is a reminder that we are all more resilient than we know, that the human heart has an almost infinite capacity for healing and growth, and that sometimes the dreams we never planned turn out to be the ones we needed all along. It is a story of second chances and new beginnings, of the courage it takes to open yourself to love after loss, and the rewards that await those who are brave enough to try in the end. Naomi and Wade's story is about the simple, profound truth that love is always worth the risk. That opening your heart, even after it has been shattered, is an act of courage that can lead to the most beautiful and unexpected blessings. That we can honor our past while embracing our future, carry our grief while still experiencing joy, remember those we have lost while loving those who are here. They wept over their stillborn dreams, yes. But they also had the courage to dream again together, and in doing so, they created a life more rich and full than either could have imagined. That is their gift to us, their legacy, their story. And it is a story that will continue to inspire as long as there are people who need to hear that no matter how dark the night, morning will come, and with it, the possibility of hope, healing, and love.